Hi, and welcome to my channel, Laura's Library Card. So I realized I never put out a December wrap-up, and I had it all, planned, and it just never happened. So I want to wrap up 2021 with a wrap-up, and didn't want to make it too long, so I am going to try something new. I have sort of scripted a couple sentences about each of the books, and I'm going to basically just read it. Hopefully it will not just be me reading and sound boring, so let's just dive right in with what I read in December. In December, I finished 10 books. 6 of them were audiobook format, 3 of them were ebook format, and 1 of them was physical format. And this was a total of 2,986 pages. So the first book that I finished was Barbarian's Choice by Ruby Dixon. This is the 12th book in the Ice Planet Barbarians series. I listened to this on audiobook. And the summary is Marduk ship makes an emergency landing on the ice planet, and Farley knows that they're destined to be together, but can her naive charms win him over to stay there with her, or will she choose to leave her home and follow love? I liked seeing the different alien culture minimally with Marduk and the others on that ship, but I was annoyed with the insta-love element. I felt like between Marduk and Farley, and also I felt like Marduk's phobias and issues were dismissed too easily by the end of the book. Plus, it felt a little creepy to me how into the innocent, virginal, rural country girl that Marduk was into and getting vibes from Farley. And so I felt like there was really sort of happy for now energy at the end of the book because I just didn't see them working out in the end. The second thing that I finished was Ho Ho Ho, A Christmas Short by Rilzy Adams. This was on Kindle Unlimited, and it's a novella or maybe a short story. The premise is that a year ago, Mila tells JB all of her woes and plans on how to get over her cheating ex by getting under as many guys as possible, and she calls this her plan to ride the reindeer. This is a Christmas short. And then now Mila is telling JB all about her exploits from a year ago, and they ultimately hook up. This is a sex-positive short story. It's full of fun, sexy escapades and humorous moments as Mila is telling her story, which is functioning as foreplay and tension between her and JB. But I was very annoyed by the "I'll love you forever, we'll be together forever." It felt really unbelievable and out of the blue and sort of nonsensical, so I didn't really like that element. The third book I finished was Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake. This is by Alexis Hall, and I listened to the audiobook version of this book. Single mom Rosaline is thrilled but also kind of anxious about being on a show that is essentially the Great British Bake Off, but she's in it for the money to better her own and her kids' future. And she meets both Alan and Harry on the show and feels romantic feelings toward both of them. I didn't really feel like it was quite a love triangle, but I don't want to give away too much of the plot. I did like the Great British Bake Off type of setting and plot element. I felt like it functioned very well in this book. I did like Rosaline's kid, whose name I've forgotten, and I liked Rosaline sort of standing up for herself and standing up to her parents. She has some character growth throughout the book. Alan was clearly a douche, but I didn't really feel like there was enough tension or emotional buildup between Rosaline and Harry, and I didn't find Harry very swoon-worthy. I also felt like it ended on a more happy for now level instead of happily ever after, just because I didn't really see a great connection between Rosaline and Harry for me personally. The next book for me was a reread. I reread The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, listened to the audio. I feel like everyone knows the premise for this, but Lucy and Josh are enemies in the workplace, and suddenly they are fighting for a single promotion opportunity, and this book is written only from Lucy's point of view. It is enemies to lovers, workplace romance. There's some caretaking, hate to love kind of situation. For me, Lucy came across as sort of wild, almost manic a couple times on this read through. And I honestly didn't feel like Josh had enough personality for me. But also he seemed to have like a personality transplant in the latter portion of the book during the wedding and when they kind of finally officially start officially being together. And for me, it's always been a good book, but it's not amazing. This was my second time through. The next book I finished was Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. I read this as an ebook, and the summary is that Aiden is this cheery, jolly department store manager, and he takes a chance on the sexy, goth-y-ish, darker sort of ex-con Stella, and he gives her a job dressing the windows in the front of the store, and they fall in love. This is a workplace romance. It's a relatively short book. I feel like it's longer than a novella, but it's still short. This was steamy to me. I wanted more depth of personality from both of the characters and more emotional development, like for them, like more character growth for them, and as well as between them for their relationship. I felt like the best friend plotline was poorly resolved. I felt like there were explicitly stated relationship and sexual boundaries that were not respected by the other person. They didn't use protection the first time that they bang it out. And then Aiden's all like freaking the sheets personality felt really forced and awkward to me. The final resolution between the two of them after the bleak moment felt really juvenile to me. And so just for me overall, this one did not work for me as a romance. I am still intrigued by Tessa Bailey as an author, and I feel like she can bring that steam, but like this book wasn't doing it for me. The next book that I finished in December was Fire in His Spirit by Ruby Dixon. This is the 5th book in the Fireblood Dragons series, which I keep returning to. So in this one, Gwen knows a bit about the dragons and the Draconi and how the males are looking for their mates. And she knows that Vaughn wants Gwen as his mate, and she, in my opinion, just strings him along unfairly to cash in on his protection while they're sort of traveling from point A to point B. I was clearly annoyed with Gwen for the whole book since she knew what to do but wouldn't/didn't do it. And so there wasn't miscommunication, there was no communication because they can't communicate until they bang it out. And so therefore, when that element is finally resolved and they finally can communicate with each other, it is insta-love. And honestly, I think that she even declares her feelings, that she realizes she's loving him, that she is in love with him before they even have sex. So they literally have never even had a real conversation. So that was really frustrating for me to experience that for so much of the book. But there is a new possible big bad evil guy presence force at the end, and so I feel like that's kind of an intriguing element. I don't know. The next book that I finished was nonfiction, graphic novel. This is They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. This is a really powerful nonfiction graphic novel. It depicts George Takei's remembrances of his years, the years of his childhood where he spent in a Japanese incarceration camp, and there's some information about his feelings and how he reflects back on this time and his conversations with his father. There's also a lot of discussion around what the government did leading up to the camp's formations and the reparations afterward. I felt like this was really moving. This was for a book club of mine, and I really liked the art style, so it was all around a win for me. The third to last book that I read in December was Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult. I listened to the audiobook version. The premise is that Diana and her doctor boyfriend, Finn, live in New York City and were supposed to go on vacation together to the Galapagos in March of 2020. But he has to stay behind as the pandemic starts to hit, and so Diana goes alone. Upon arrival, the island shuts down in quarantine, and Diana is stuck there for longer than she ever had planned. But she ends up making friends with some locals, including a teenage girl who is clearly going through some mental health issues, and the girl's attractive father, Gabriel, whatever. Content warnings for self-harm here, as well as other things. For me, this wasn't the type of book that I've come to expect from Jodi Picoult. Instead of a big ethical dilemma frequently involving a courtroom drama, this book felt a little bit more like a thought experiment, and also like Jodi Picoult was working through her own thoughts on COVID. I felt like the first half of the book was relatively slow paced. I wanted more plot. I didn't fully buy all these changes in herself that Diana felt she was experiencing while she was on the island. The elements of her being an art buyer, and also her relationship with her mother as her mother develops dementia. I felt like those elements weren't really well developed. I will say there's sort of a twist about halfway, 60% of the way through this book, that got me shook. Like, I had not seen that coming, and I felt like the second half of the book was stronger for that reason, but I don't want to give it away. The second to last book that I finished in December was Santa Daddy by Keira Andrews. This was an ebook. I think it's a novella also. The premise is that young Hunter, not long graduated, is super intrigued and attracted to the older Nick. Like, you know, Santa, Nick. And when circumstances sort of throw them together, they explore a relationship together. There are tropes including age gap, forced proximity, some light caretaking, daddy kink / dom sub element. This is a male romance. I like that they had differing personalities, and those felt well done to me, well drawn, but them together did not feel very well done to me. I felt like they got together as a couple very quickly, and it felt like insta-love after their sexual encounters. And so this was definitely a steamy novella, but I didn't feel like it had any emotional development that I want in my romances, and I didn't see how this was going to have lasting happy ever after energy. I felt like it was, again, sort of a happy for now ending. The last book that I read in December was Kulti by Mariana Zapata. This is an audiobook that I listened to. And in this book, Sal is our main female character. She's a professional soccer player, and she has always admired and had a crush on professional soccer player Kulti, who's this German guy a little bit older than her. And she is surprised to develop a friendship with this gruff, off-putting hottie after he becomes one of her team's coaches. So this is a slow burn contemporary sports romance with a little bit of an age gap and, in my opinion, some power imbalances, because he's like technically one of her coaches. I didn't really care about the soccer elements of this book, but I did appreciate how Sal put soccer first, and that job and passion was so much in the book. I feel like frequently characters' passions or jobs are hardly ever mentioned in books. I felt like the slow burn element was done pretty well from a like tension standpoint, but it did make me bored because it felt like the plot was too slow. I also wanted a little bit more emotional development between the two of them, because I felt like Kulti just like liked her kind of out of the blue. And maybe a dual point of view could have helped me see that better. I also didn't really care about the third act drama, so I didn't feel a lot of tension there. And also, one of the things that doesn't work out great for me is someone who enters the book when they already have feelings for a person, because I want to see those feelings develop. In December, I did participate in the Reindeer Readathon, and this is a graphic that shows how all of my books that I just described fit all of those prompts. So those were the 10 books I finished in December. I am glad that I finished the year pretty strong, and now I have to put together all of January's stuff because I'm recording this pretty late. But I have a question for you, which is, do you prefer to see sort of monthly wrap-ups? Or I've been thinking about different ways I could do wrap-ups in January and throughout 2022. I was thinking of doing something more like the last 10 books I read, but I also don't want the videos to be too long. I was also thinking about maybe just putting something out kind of twice a month, like a mid-month wrap-up and an end-of-the-month wrap-up, though I will have fewer books to talk about each video. So how would you prefer to get any of this information? Would you want me to do like a short where I basically just list them all off and that's it? I would love your opinions for what kind of content you are interested in watching. Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and check out other videos on my channel, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!